Hi everyone, my name is Flora and today I want to talk about how to improve your work-life balance. I think this is an especially important topic for small organisation CEOs because often we can look at our organisation as our baby and it's something that we really want to nurture and grow and help succeed. And so we put all of our time and energy into it. We spend late nights worrying about it. We put a lot of self-sacrifice in the hopes that it will lead to the best possible outcomes for the organization. And while this can be effective in the short term, in the long term, that kind of one track focus, that aspect of having work become our whole lives, is actually very damaging to us as individuals and is damaging to the organization. So, what I would like to talk about today is some of the things that I would recommend you think about and put in place to help improve that work-life balance. So, my first recommendation is to define your physical boundaries. So, if you work away from home, this is quite an easy step to make. It just means that your home space is for personal time, and wherever your workplace is externally, that is the only place that you do work. So when you go there, you're in the zone, you're ready, that's work time. But the moment you leave work behind in that location and you don't bring it home, you don't bring it outside. If you work from home, obviously this can be a bit more challenging, especially if you don't have a separate office space at home. But what I would recommend there is that you define a set place within your home, be it your kitchen table or your sofa, wherever is comfortable and where you can do work, as your workspace. But again, make sure that those are the only places that you do work. So in the evening, when you sit down for dinner, you sit in a separate seat than the one that you worked in, or you sit on a different side of the sofa even, if you're in your personal time compared to your work time. What can help with this is my second recommendation, which is to segregate your devices. So what I mean by this is make sure that any digital device, so your phone or your laptop, you have separated between your personal devices and your work devices. So if work doesn't give you separate devices and you can't afford to buy them for yourself, then I'd recommend to at least have different user accounts on the device that you're using so that you have a different login for work mode or home mode. You make them as different as possible so you have different backgrounds, different passwords, different email addresses, all to make sure that when you're in work time, you can explore everything you need for work, but then when work time is over, you don't look at your work emails because they're not on your personal account. You can't access them, and therefore the temptation isn't there of, oh, I'll just quickly have a look to see what's come in. And this feeds very nicely into recommendation 3, which is to define your working hours. Now, I know currently there's a lot of talk about the benefits of flexible working and flexi hours, and it might sound a bit old-fashioned to talk about having set working hours, but I'm not necessarily recommending having 9 to 5, although to be honest, that's always worked really well for me, but just to set a structure to what hours you will work. So if you have caring responsibilities, it might be that you do a couple of hours in the morning, then you take your children to school, then you do a few hours, you pick them up, and then after they go to bed, you do extra hours. Whatever works for you, just define that and put a structure around it so that you always work those same 2 morning hours, those hours during the day, and those evening hours after they've gone to bed. And this will help you manage your own expectations of when you have to be on and when work is meant to be happening, so you don't feel guilty about, those caring responsibilities that you're attending to outside of those working hours. And it also helps manage your team's expectations about when they can contact you. So if they know you're not available between 9 and 10, then they won't try to contact you. And again, that helps preserve those boundaries and makes it clear when it's work time and when it's personal time. Fourth recommendation is to protect your breaks. So this is something I see a lot of small organization CEOs falling down in that because we're so pressed for time and often resources, We feel like we always have to be on, and so we don't take any breaks. Don't take holiday, accrue all that annual leave, don't even take weekends, don't even take your lunch break. And again, what I mentioned earlier is while that might help in the short term with meeting those deadlines and keeping things going, in the long term, that is very damaging to you and to the organization. So for you personally, you will exhaust yourself, and no matter how much extra time you put in after that exhaustion, the quality of the output will be poor. The damage to your organization comes from the fact that the organization is built around you always being on. And that means there are no resilience mechanisms in place for what would happen if you couldn't be working for reasons outside of your control. That means that things really would fall apart if you're not around, because you've not developed your team. They've not developed their problem solving skills, and so they can't help address any issues that arrive if you are not at work. So if you're already at the point where taking a break seems like a distant memory or a fantasy even, I wouldn't recommend jumping straight in and going off for 2 weeks and not checking your emails, because the organization's not set up for it and things will likely go wrong. What I'd recommend is you find small ways to start building it into your habit and the resilience of the organization. So take your lunch break. If you make it clear to your team in advance that there'll be a set half an hour or an hour where you will be having lunch, and then turn off your work device, still have your personal phone with you, so in the case of an absolute emergency, there's a way to contact you, but take that half an hour, and just eat your lunch. Go for a walk, watch some terrible TV, read a book, anything, but just don't do work and see what happens. And what I will suggest will happen is you will have a nice break, you'll probably feel a little bit anxious, you'll come back to work, and likely team members won't even notice you've been gone for that period of time because it's really not that long. And the benefit of that is that it'll build your confidence in being able to step away, and it'll build your team's ability to respond to any issues that come up while you're away. And so over time, you can build in this habit of taking those short breaks and then experiment with taking slightly longer breaks. So with all that accrued annual leave, take a half day, see what happens. Again, have your personal device there so you can be contacted in an emergency, but just try taking that half day. Build up to taking your full weekend if you can't remember the last time it was that you took a weekend and didn't do any work. And again, over time, you'll build in that resilience, you'll build in that response, you'll develop your team, and you will develop your own comfort with taking breaks to the point that you could take a full week off and not check your emails. It is possible, and it is something that you deserve to do, just the same as anyone else. Now, I know a lot of people at this point start to panic of, if I can be away for a week, does that mean I'm not useful or I don't have importance within the organization? That's not what that means. Being able to go away for a week means that the organization isn't so solely dependent on you that everything falls apart if you go away. You're still valuable when you're around. It just means that you can be healthy and the organization can be healthy with you taking a break. And my final recommendation is to develop your life outside of work. So I know a lot of people think that having good friendships or having hobbies or interests are things that we either can naturally do or that are ingrained in ourselves from birth. And that's not true. All of these things, socializing, building up skills and expertise in hobbies, are things that develop if you put in the time and effort to develop them. Because I find a lot of small organization CEOs will work on the first four recommendations and get to the point where they do have time outside of work, but then think, oh God, life's so boring, I don't have anything to do, I'll just do some work. So that's why it's really important that you do put in that effort to make life interesting outside of work. And that again will help reinforce keeping that work-life balance if life outside of work is something interesting and that you want to do. So those are my 5 recommendations for how to balance work and life so that you can bring your best self to work, but still have enough of you left to have the best self of you in your personal time as well. I hope you found it useful. If you did, I'd really appreciate if you clicked the like button, and it means that the video will be more searchable for other people. If you have any other techniques or methods that you use to balance work and life, I'd love it if you popped it in the comment below so that I can learn something and anyone else who's watching this video can learn from your experience as well. If you'd like to join me for a future video, then please do hit the subscribe button, and then you'll get a little notification anytime I put out a new video. But in any case, thank you so much for listening, and I do hope to see you in a future time. Bye.